Today, we're going to be talking to the showrunner and executive producer of the smash hit podcast, Bad Friends. You might know him as Fancy B. Everyone else might know him as Andres Rosende. There's no way I'm saying that right. But if you saw my Ben Avery episode, what I'm trying to do is talk to people in podcasting that people wonder, how do I get that job? How did they get there? So today, I'm doing that with Andres. Now's a good time to remind you, comment, like, subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm. Before we get into the interview, I'd like to thank the executive producer of this episode, Colin Haley. Thanks to Colin Haley's big baller support, I don't have to go to raves and stuff like that with a bottle of vitamin D and try and sell it off as, federally illegal drugs. Because we're sure selling drugs is bad, but selling vitamins to people in search for illegal drugs could be called morally worse or morally better, depending how you look at it. But because of Colin Haley, I don't have to deceive ravers and get to continue to do this high caliber type of content. And if you'd like to become a big baller supporter of the show, you could go ahead and click the Patreon link in the description below. Welcome to another episode of Catching You Up with
Nadav. It's
Without further ado, here is the interview with Andres. All right, so we are over here in the Seven Eki studio, and so many people are always express so much interest to know in what podcast producers that they're aware of, what their background is, how they got there. A lot of people think all you need to know is how to Google, and let me tell you right now, that's incorrect. So over here, I have with me Andres of Bad Friends fame and SOS VHS and all that good stuff that you guys know him for. Andres, how are you doing, man?
Hey, thank you for having me.
Dude, good. Thank you for having me in your studio, allowing me to use all of your really nice equipment and stuff.
Yeah, it's fun.
So first, we're just right out the way. Any plugs, anything you want to promote, where they could follow you, things like that?
I think people can just check us out at SOS VHS, obviously, Bad Friends. I'm always there.
Hell yeah.
And then on Instagram, they can follow me on Fancy B.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So, all that people really see when they watch these podcasts is oh, this person's in a chair or this person's on a mic and laughing like a hyena.
Right.
I could do that, but you and me both know that that's not the job. That's just the part that they see.
Right.
And that they don't know that there's actually years, decades that go into being in a position like this. So I kind of want to rewind because I feel like a lot of people like us, there's a very definitive point where you're this is what I want to do, and I don't see myself really doing too much else.
Right.
So kind of walk me through, what was the first time that you realized you wanted to, be in entertainment?
Well, okay. So in entertainment, I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was 16 when the movies turned 100 years old.
Okay.
And then my hometown did a lot of a festival to celebrate the first 100 years of movies, and I got to see all classical movies in the movie theater.
What year was that?
That's 1996.
Wow. Okay.
So I was blown away. I got to see movies that really influenced me, and after that week, I went back home and said, and I told my parents, I want to do that. I don't know what that is, but I would like to work in that world.
And in Spain?
Yeah, in Spain.
Uh-huh.
So then was my parents wanted me to go to college. There's no such thing as film school in Spain inside a college structure. It's more a separate thing that you can go to film school, but you're not in college.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to regular school. I did my 4 years of college, and during that time, the opportunity presented itself to come to the U.S. with a scholarship to a smaller town in Connecticut. So I took it. I love the U.S. I love I always loved the Hollywood movies. So I decided to apply to film school in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I got accepted. I went to New York, and then from New York to LA. So I always wanted to be in movies.
Which NY? Which film?
I went to Columbia.
Okay.
And that's where I met George.
Oh yeah.
Actually, George produced a lot of my short films when we were in school, and then he moved out to LA a couple years before me, and he interned in a lot of different companies. He made a few movies. He worked on movies, but he got the bug of like something new. He wanted to be new technology, new media, new stuff. Movies take too long to do it, so the immediate satisfaction of YouTube that was starting to blow up was more his thing. So he started working at Maker Studios. At that time was the center of like the world for YouTube, and where he met a lot of the people who today work at 7X.
Right. Which, by the way, I think is the coolest thing. Like, it's one thing to like start a new studio, but to bring in all of like your killers that you knew along the way. It's like, oh shit, let me absorb all my closest friends from like the industry. You know?
It was fun, and back then at Maker they did things a little more like, you know, guerrilla style. Like they would shoot things very quickly. Some things more cheaply than others, but in general, cheap shoots fast, and they would get these returns in terms of like views and monetization and all of that. So George met Bobby Lee there, and he'll tell you more about it when you talk to
Yeah, wait, hold on. I feel like we're skipping a lot of stuff.
Well, because I'm saying like while he was doing that, I was in movies 100%. You know, I was writing movies. I was trying to get some of my stuff produced.
Ooh. Can you tell me the first, like the first concept of the first movie that you wrote?
Yeah, so there's a movie called today. You can check it out on Netflix. The Devil Below. It's a movie that I developed for a long time.
The Devil Below.
Yeah, it's a horror movie about a group of scientists that go to the Appalachia.
Yeah.
And they discover there's a lot of monsters underneath.
That was you?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's so fucking cool.
It's a movie that I developed for a long time with a friend of mine who was a writer at Columbia. It was a movie that I was gonna direct. We got money, we lost money for a few years, and finally I got to a production company that really wanted to make it. But my fee was their fee was you have to get out of the director's chair. We'll make the movie if you're not directing because we have already a director for this. So I accepted that.
How did you handle that? Was that like a huge blow to the ego? Was that?
It was it hurt a little bit at the beginning because I was like, you know, this never-ending cycle of making your first movie.
Right.
But I wanted to make it.
Because how many years were you already into development before you get to that point where they're like, we'll make it, but you
I would
can't
say like something like 6 years.
Oh
It was like
God.
crazy because it almost happened a few times. And in the meantime, I started like
Devastating, man.
writing like more like I did a TV movie with Mar Vista in that vein.
Oh shit.
That you might like.
Uh-huh.
I did 2 movies with one director that I wrote. Anyway, but not the stuff that I wanted to do. So this movie was a horror movie that I love the concept. They hired a new director. I became a producer in the movie.
Okay.
And first I was going to be a producer that was more like, yes, well, you brought us the project, that's it.
Right. You're on set. If anyone has any questions, you're there to answer
You get
questions.
the title,
Right.
and that's it. But the shoot became a nightmare.
Oh, I can't. Dude, horror stories are my favorite.
Yeah, I haven't talked about it publicly because, you know, well, anyway, but the director, and we had issues with the director. And eventually I became really involved in the movie. And we spent a year re-editing the movie.
No shit.
And doing some reshoots and things like that to make it look like a movie.
So was it issues with the director happen once filming already wrapped?
No, through the whole process, we realized that, you know, I feel like in the industry, there's 2 type of people. The people, some people have both elements, but most people either know how to do the job or know how to sell themselves to do the job. And it's so important to know how to sell yourself, and it's its own thing, you know?
Right.
And you say all the right things, but then if you cannot execute, then you're in trouble.
Right. It's going to be the first gig that you get. It's going to be the last gig, too.
Right. So that's kind of the situation. And I mean, he's a nice guy. I have no personal issues, but the thing that he sold me on, like, was not there at all. So then, the movie did pretty well. It was number 2 on Netflix for a couple weeks.
Hell yeah, dude. That's awesome.
And then with this production company,
what year did it release?
It released in 2019 or 2020.
Okay.
Because the whole pandemic has my brain like Yeah, I think 2019 it got released. And then with the same production company, we made a second movie. I took the whole crew to Spain. We shot it in Spain,
Hell yeah.
and I think we got a lot of more um, production value for the money.
What was the premise of that second movie?
The second movie was a Latino with a horror movie too, with political influences. It's about, and then we had Jen Ortega in the movie.
Sick.
Before Wednesday, and it is about a group of immigrants, like kids immigrants, who are put into a program to help work in like homes for older people in order to get their citizenship.
Okay.
And then what they discover,
like Saw meets immigration type deal.
yeah, exactly. It's like a little bit of the Jordan Peele universe with Latinos instead of with African Americans. That sort of thing. And then you discover that they're doing experiments in these homes and all of that.
Sick.
So after we finished that movie, we're working on a third movie, and this was going to be an action movie, like car chases and all of that. We were shooting in Budapest in Hungary. And this is like February of 2020.
Uh-huh. Isn't it fucking complicated as shit to be shooting in all these foreign countries? Are you like familiar with these since you kind of like grew up in Europe?
Definitely, I grew up in Europe and in Spain, and the way that film works in the EU versus the US is different. So EU considers film a cultural treasure, and therefore they fund a lot of, like, through the government, you fund a lot of the movie business.
Okay.
The US is all private equity.
Uh-huh.
So I, myself and a few other people, my partners, that want to try to bridge the gap and try to make American movies that can qualify as European and get a little bit of both the private equity and the soft money.
Okay. Is it like in terms of like, oh, you shoot it and then we like give you wild rebates after you guys wrap?
So there is the rebate option that's exactly how it works. There's also tax incentives if you have enough people to qualify that movie as European. There's also grants, pure like money that you are getting at the beginning. So all of the three elements could be. Some movies in Europe are made for free. Basically, producer gets TV money and the government money and rebates and tax incentives and all of that stuff, and end up paying nothing for the movie.
Damn.
So
that's kind of the move.
It's kind of the move if you can crack that system.
Right, if you know it.
Yeah.
It seems like you're pretty
yeah. So what I'm trying to do is like a little bit of like a hybrid where, like, some private equity from the US comes to Europe, and then the risk gets minimized by all of these things. But still, you don't have to go through the process of getting these grants that makes a certain type of film are only, it has to be some social things that are not particularly commercial.
Right, you have to like put in a couple lines of dialogue in order to qualify for a specific grant.
Right,
like that type of stuff.
Things like that. Yeah.
Let's take a quick break and tell you about the sponsor of this episode, Aura Frames. Moms do a lot, and it's time to give back to them this Mother's Day with something that they'll love a lot. Aura Frames make the perfect gift. It's a digital picture frame that lets you share and display unlimited photos. Just use the Aura app to easily share your pictures, so mom can feel like she was there for your kid's piano recital or that trip to the park. They come in both matted and solid designs to match with any style. And the anti-glare matte finish screen means that every photo will look great. And look, with Mother's Day coming up, I'm really excited to give an Aura frame to my mom, because I think she's really going to like all the pictures that I personally upload to that frame. And I'm also going to get an Aura frame for my brother, because he's probably going to think it was a really thoughtful gift until he sees the pictures that are going to cycle through his Aura frame. Happy Mother's Day, bro. Each Aura frame comes with a stand and a mounting kit, so you can easily display it on the table or hang it on the wall. Right now, Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. Listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com and get $30 off plus free shipping on their best-selling frame. That's AURA frames.com. And use code NADAV, Nadav, to check out and save. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you, Oriframes, for sponsoring this episode. Now let's get back to the show.
But anyway, so I was working on this movie. The pandemic hit. I lost the movie. I came back to the U.S. and in March of 2020, George called me again and said, "Hey, well, you have nothing to do now. Bobby wants to start a new podcast. Why don't you help us out?
Huh.
We have no money, have nothing, but you are home depressed." So
weren't we all? Yeah, podcasts were the only things that were allowed to actually, I wouldn't call it allowed to operate.
But it was pretty much the
Right.
only and it definitely. I always say that Bad Friends is a podcast like a pandemic podcast.
Yeah, like it was, I remember there was one article that I saw that said like, here are like the 5 or 6 different business types that are allowed to operate. And one of them was podcasts. I was like, not sure why they put podcasts on that list.
Yeah.
And also not sure why they didn't differentiate between like news podcasts and like farting and shitting podcasts.
Right. and yeah, ours was like a late night TV show, right? Like the same way like the ones you were working at, like
Right.
a table to host. We tried to do some remote stuff and never worked. They didn't have the rhythm.
Remote podcasts suck so bad.
Yeah.
Anytime you try and book a guest and they're like, they can't make it to the studio. Do you guys do Skype? It's like, we have the technology to do it, but we're not going to.
Right.
We don't have to.
Yeah, we did a one, I think, and realized that it's just the timing for comedy. Yeah, that delay thing, it didn't work out.
Yeah. It takes one of them being like, sorry, wait, what'd you say? And then then they didn't hear it like a third time. They're like, sorry, one more time. And you're like, God damn this.
The joke is gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing. So yeah, I started working on Bad Friends. I think it was episode 3 or 4, and then and at that time it was a 3-camera episode or shoot. They start laughing at my accent, so they put a microphone on me, and then
Good.
eventually a camera on me, and then that's how it all started. So for me, it was never like I had a passion for podcasting. It was more like I fell into it through all of this
Right. But
timing and luck.
But you had like all this talent and all these capabilities that kind of prepared you for the opportunity. So
Yeah, and I was very used to work with actors and with talent. So
Right.
it was
George knew you weren't going to be a schmuck on set.
Yeah, exactly. And I never wanted to be also on camera, so this was one of those things that it happened. And probably because I didn't want to be on camera, I ended up being on camera.
Right.
You know, that the sort of thing that they like to play with you.
It's kind of like how it works. Like it's and it's one thing that I've noticed too, because when I started at YMH, there was probably 1.5 years, 2 years, maybe 2.5 years where I was never on set. Like I went and picked up SD cards, turned it around, and then did all my uploads. And then once we turned into like a big production studio, it was like, oh, well, we're just going to live switch because that's going to save time in post. Like if everyone's in this building, we might as well just do it that way.
Yeah.
And then in doing that, you realize that them talking and now there's an observer in the room, that now kind of changes the dynamic of stuff. And they're like, oh shit, this person's laughing, or like they're doing things that are making us kind of like interact with them. It starts developing like an ensemble cast.
Definitely. It felt exactly like that. And in our case, like Bobby's girlfriend's niece was living with them at that moment.
Right.
And so she was allowed to be around them because they were in his bubble.
Mm-hmm.
So we trained her to turn the cameras on and to record and to make sure the framing was right.
Because they were super like COVID, like scared of everything, right?
She was, so he was.
Right.
And then Andrew was like, this is not a problem. By the way, Andrew was the one who got COVID first. But Chris DeStefano gave it to all of them. So that's basically how Rudy became a character. It was like pure also timing and luck, not by design.
Right.
And because she was there, they start talking to her, and her reactions were hilarious. So
Right.
eventually, that's how that ensemble cast started to form.
That's fascinating. So,
Yeah.
I mean, coming from film, producing those and writing those and like,
Yeah.
from soup to nuts on all of that, like what are the differences? What are the similarities from producing a horror movie
Right.
to producing a nightmare situation like Bad Friends.
Yeah. So the first thing that was different is that obviously the timing, right? Like
hmm
we had to produce an hour every week or an hour and 15 minutes.
Right.
And the time the sometimes we would shoot on a Sunday for a Monday upload, crazy turnaround.
Right.
And also the thing that I brought, I guess, to Bad Friends was that I like to edit. It's pretty heavily edited.
hmm
So I remember when we did the swap, like Two Bears was more like, okay, everything is in. You
Right.
know, if they if you had slow moments, they are slow.
Right.
From the beginning, I wanted to do something very different than Tiger Belly. So Tiger Belly had these long shots that were all running at the same time from beginning to end.
Right. Yeah. You guys, like Tiger Belly always had a super source that I always thought was such an interesting way to do it.
It was a very specific look, also created. I mean, and George can tell you the whys that they created, but also the
Oh, I
practical.
can't wait to talk to him about that.
And so when we started this, I said like, absolutely not. Let's do something completely different because you already have one with Bobby. Let's do one that is a multicam, more TV,
hmm
and then because the difference between Bad Friends and Tiger Belly is like, I think George and I talk about this many times. Like he calls Tiger Belly like a sitcom, like a place to hang out. You get to meet the characters, all of that. So
hmm
if Tiger Belly is a sitcom, like Bad Friends is a sketch show.
Okay.
So it goes. They do a lot of improv, and the quickness of it makes a lot of the jokes, the
Right.
response. So I started editing and taking out silences and moments, and so even if we shoot 2 hours, I only put an hour and 10 minutes out every week.
Oh, interesting.
So it became this fast-paced show.
Even if you shoot that on Sundays, like how?
Yes.
So how long is that turnaround from when you get the footage? Like, how long do you need to sit with the footage before you have a finished product?
So it has vary over time,
Mhm.
meaning I'm so
Getting
used to
faster
it
and
now,
stuff,
and
yeah.
faster and faster and faster. At the beginning, it will be like I need at least 2 days, 2 full days with it,
Right.
editing and editing. I now like in a day it gets done. But
Interesting.
yeah, I like the getting the ads and like the proofreading everything or proof watching everything to make sure that everything was when we did it with such short turnaround, we could make some mistakes, and we made I mean, of course, I made mistakes.
Oh, there's mistakes in like it's impossible to go a year of podcasting without
Yeah.
like a bunch of mistakes made.
And we try to lean on to the mistakes and make fun of it. You know, I got fired from the show 3 or 4 times, and every
Right.
time we make a big fuss out of it when something. So I remember one time exporting something, I switched a camera accidentally in the final stages. We have already done it. So the Bobby and Andrew are doing his show, and the camera's on me for straight like 5 minutes,
Oh, I remember that.
and everybody.
I'm just like, oh man, someone's getting yelled at for this.
Exactly. So the Reddit, the comments, and we didn't realize until we start reading the stuff, and then we go rewatch. It is because also I'm doing nothing.
Don't you feel like just your entire body starts sweating?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you see like one comment, you're like, that's weird. And then you see like a whole bunch of other ones, you're like, hold on, what the fuck? Someone put in a time code and you go to it and you're like,
Exactly.
no! Like
And you start sweating, and then it's like usually and Bobby and I are pretty chill about all of that stuff. They know how it works, and usually it's like, okay, how can we make something out of this? If
Right.
everybody knows that this happened, we cannot change it. So let's make fun of it next time or lean
Right.
into it. And that's how usually we do things, knowing that there's gonna be some mistakes.
Right, because I mean that's kind of like it's so interesting how it's podcasting is in parallel with TV shows and movies and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but at the same time, there's so not a seriousness to it. I mean, I'd say particularly comedy podcasts,
Right.
because it allows room for error. Where not only that, but errors kind of start becoming plot points
Yeah.
and overreaching arcs. Like, I became the face of dumb idiot mistakes at YMH, whether I made them or not.
Right.
And it's like, because that was the character that I was playing. It's like, could you believe we let this fucking, village retard, well, maybe we'll bleep that out.
Right.
Running
Absolutely.
the show. And it's like, it's
Absolutely.
all part of the bit, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting how this new world with like those parasocial interactions start happening, and people believe So I'm even if they say, look, this is a sketch show. We do a lot of improv stuff. Everything we say here is a lie. Every person is playing a character.
Right.
Still, even with that is at this close, everybody thinks that everything that happens in the show is real.
Oh yeah.
So it's very interesting to see how we feed on that, and they because we can do anything, and we are characters like
Right.
and you became that character.
Yeah,
Right?
you just start become like, yeah, it's all kind of based in what your actual personality is, but it's always like if your personality is, let's say, a natural 4 or natural 5, you're taking it to like a 10 or an 11. You're like,
Indeed.
all my flaws, I'm like exaggerating, you know?
Yeah. So for me, it was exactly like that. It's like I didn't know that you have to talk, but they made me laugh for real. Like
Right.
I think they're so funny, and that sense of humor is my sense of humor.
Right.
So sometimes I'm like just crying, laughing. So, and then people
I know
say,
the
like,
feeling.
Oh, right. People think that I'm faking it or whatever. You know,
Dude, that is the funniest commentator. I'm like, Jesus, all this forced laughter. It's like, dude, we're cheap dates, man.
Yeah,
Like-
absolutely, and things like that. Or for example, like now we try this thing where I always give Bobby shit,
Uh-huh.
and that became my character. So now in every episode, I look for that opportunity where I can like say something
Yeah.
to him, and then people are like, oh, you really hate Bobby, like that sort of thing. But even we became characters. I didn't know that was part of the job.
Yeah, it's something you kind of figure out when you go. Like, what was the moment that you realized I was like, oh, this is a little different than what I thought it was going to be? And yeah, I am now playing a character. Like, do you remember, like, was there a point where like, oh shit, let me start leaning into this? Like, the fans are now kind of aware of who I am. This is weird.
It was later on. It took me a long time because obviously during COVID I wasn't going anywhere either.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in my own bubble of like I was doing stand up. They forced me to do a stand up. It's the most terrible stand up you'll see early on.
They made you write it?
They made you maybe write it and perform it, and it's terrible.
Do you remember some of those jokes?
Let me. No, I'm not gonna do it. But anyway,
Smart.
it was all like that. But I think when the pandemic started easing, like maybe a year after the podcast was started,
Mhm.
because we started in February of 2020.
Okay.
So I think by 2021, I was at a CVS, and people say hi to me. Like I was with my wife, like I don't know these people. And then
Oh
they
yeah,
were
the
saying,
first time you get recognized is wild.
and then that started happening again and again and again, to a point that now I cannot go anywhere, especially in LA,
Yeah.
without someone. And because my character's name is Fancy,
Yeah.
then I can distinguish, because if someone says Fancy, I know that they come from the show. It's not that I
Right.
forgot these people that usually it's like someone says hi, I'm trying to think, where do I know you from?
Oh yeah. There's that first like 10 seconds where like you shake their hand, you're like, I've met a lot of people. I'm not sure if I've met this person,
Right.
or they just, parasocial, like that familiarity that they build where you're like, I have no idea who the fuck you are, dude.
Exactly. So that, to me, that was wild, that suddenly you are internet famous somehow.
Right.
And yeah, the show grew. So like, if 1 million to 2 million people are watching each episode and you are there all the time, then eventually they'll associate you with the
Right.
show. My wife I would freeze every time because I don't know, I'm usually a shy person outside, the chair.
Have you figured it out now, or is it still just as weird?
No, I figured it out. And I kind of like, I feel more natural, because I think it's nice that people, feel some type of way about what we do. I was never a huge fanboy of anything or
Mhm.
anyone growing up, meaning like if I see Leonardo DiCaprio or whatever, or
You wouldn't
Angelina
freak
Jolie.
out if you saw Leonardo DiCaprio?
No, I don't really care much about that stuff, about
be
the
like,
actors, the
Dude,
stars.
what's eating Gilbert Grape? You did that better than anyone
But
else.
and I think they're great and talented. But maybe because I work with so many actors, I feel it's a world that I'm, it's like
True.
their thing. I'm cool not being your friend. I'm
Right.
okay being on my lane. And then maybe like there's like if I were to meet John Williams or someone like that, I was like, yeah, I will freak out a little more, but that's more nerdy, you know?
Right.
I wouldn't Brad Pitt.
Oh, dude, you did the best fucking Star Trek soundtrack I've ever heard.
Right, Star Wars.
Oh shit, I said Star Trek.
Yeah.
I mixed it up together.
But so yeah, I feel like that's I think why I got to work with Bobby and Andrew pretty well, because I didn't want to be their friend either, or like it was like, yeah, it's a job. It's
right. And I like that's what people appreciate too, is like, I mean, and granted, like I loved comedians like when I started working with Tom and Christina, but
yeah,
if you started freaking out, like it's kind of a liability if you're fanboying on all the guests. It's like, hey man, we need someone to pretend like they've been here before, like
absolutely.
offer them water, like that's kind of the gig, and then just shut the fuck up behind that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I was pretty natural at that from the beginning, you know. And then also like the familiar. So I remember both Andrew and Bobby were way more hands-on in the beginning and more like protective of the show, and then, you know, gaining their trust to let me do my thing, you know. And once the show was created, that rhythm.
Meaning in terms of like concepts for the show, or like even allowing you to speak on the show.
No, well, a little bit of everything. I don't like to speak a lot because I understood pretty early on that this is their show.
Right. We're not the show. We just help them make it.
Exactly. So
speak when spoken to type stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was very natural to me. I didn't want to be a star. I didn't want to. And when we have, the way that our friends work, when we have a guest, I always try to remind them, even if the guest is big, that they are there as a third chair, as like, you know, to play with them when the ball, you know, gets thrown your way.
Right.
And not to try to overtake their show, because it's very, I realize that almost nobody can play at the level.
Right.
So it's very weird to get someone there who is going to play the same.
Right.
It's going to be them doing their thing, and then this person like completely lost. So I don't like having that many guests.
And I imagine you've definitely had some misses where you're like, yes, this is a huge name, but like we've now delivered like a version of the show that isn't what people are used to.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly. And our core fans feel it too. Like, you know, like sometimes it opens up a new audience.
Right.
Which is good. Sorry, but other times it's like, yeah, the it's not as fun. They cannot do their improv as well, or and singing. So for example, with Rudy, it became a character that grew on the show.
Right.
So she knows exactly when to chime in, which is like, hey, when they are directly addressing you,
right,
that's it.
Right.
So sometimes they need a little extra thing. They'll throw the ball this way, and that's it.
Totally.
And I feel like that's the best version of the show is when that happens. And with us, the producers, right? And we usually are two producers. Mm-hmm. One is like doing the live switch, and the other one is more with the Googling and stuff. And then we're like characters, like, oh, yeah, when they throw it our way, we also speak. But in terms of, I was thinking, what I was saying that they trust us more with the final product. They would like review every single thing in the beginning.
Oh, really? Oh, right, because it was so heavily edited. They were probably like, yo, you edited that thing out, right?
Right, and exactly. And then eventually it was like, okay, you do your thing. And we are, because people think like we're censoring when we're cutting it, and that wasn't it. It was more like, there's sometimes that it's boring. They lose the train of thought, or we pause for a cigarette or whatever, like things that I don't want to see.
Right.
Me as an audience. So I'm always looking at it through that point of view, and I prefer like the fast pace.
Right. And you're trying to make it as seamless as possible. And
right.
Like, sometimes, like, yeah, there's not a direct action match or object match that you could, like, artfully hide the edit in.
Right.
And every now and then, you know, you'll slip up, too, where it's just like, oh, shit, there was just a jump cut from the same angle.
Yeah, and we try to have zero jump cuts on this show. You know, other shows, we just, like, lean more towards that, and that's more, like, younger hype, like TikTok stuff.
Right.
Like, with a lot of jump cuts. We try to make it seem seamless. You know, even if I don't have the shot, I will cut away somewhere else and then come back. And yeah, sometimes it's a little more noticeable. I would say 90% of the time is you wouldn't know where I cut.
Exactly.
And
they only notice the egregious stuff. That was
right.
Like it was like even at YMH, like we would review, like, you know, and I'd review with the post-production team. Like I had a pretty good eye for it. So it's, you could always tell, like, oh, we also had like 3 or 4 different angles to fuck around with, where it's like you could always cut to someone's reaction and fake a cut to something.
Exactly.
But every now and then, that's impossible to do. And so then people will start creating all sorts of wild conspiracy theories of like,
Yeah.
oh, I know they just said the N-word or like something where it's just like, dude,
Right.
fucking
Right.
chill, bro. This isn't a conspiracy. We're just trying to give you the best possible product of what this show is. You don't need to hear, well, I mean, we always left in like the pause for bathroom breaks because we always believe that people should know that they're humans and that they piss and shit just like everyone else.
True. And a lot of people like love the hanging out experience and watching it all.
Right.
So it was, yeah. I decided to be like more Hollywood and like say like, no, they're not humans. They're just like joke machines
Right.
for our show. But in any case, those usually the cuts are pretty invisible. But when they are not, and there's a conspiracy theories start, so you lean into those or not. But for example, one of the things that we do a lot is like the first 5 minutes of the show cannot have swear words.
Right.
Because if not, YouTube will take it down.
The algorithm. And then there's my favorite are the fans are like, why the fuck would you even listen to what YouTube has to say? It's like, well, you don't care about the monetization part.
Yeah.
You care about the like them limiting who gets
They
to
bury
see it.
the show, that
Right.
nobody has access to it, or like only your core fans can find it.
Right. Because there's like a thing where it's like all of a sudden you'll be like, yo, this normally has like 20K views within the first like hour or two. Why is it only at 5?
Right.
And then you start looking like, oh shit, it's got the yellow coin on it. What happened? And then just figuring out why it's even like that.
Right.
And then it's, fuck, all right. And it takes you months to figure out what the rule is because
Totally.
your YouTube contact also is kind of in the dark on a lot of
And
shit.
they start changing the rules and like keeping up with those rules. I'm yeah. You know, you cannot do sex motions with your hands. Something that how could I know that algorithm will catch up on that?
Right.
And the moment I learned, like, you know, you share with everybody, you know, and then we start cutting away from that. You know, when someone is doing that, like you cut to the other person's reaction.
And it's crazy. Like, it's crazy. Like, I didn't know that it could do hand motions. Actually, I just realized that I think I did one on SOS, but you guys could probably just cut away. But, like, onto that, I remembered this one story that's always been so wild to me. I believe his name was Derek Delgado. He had like a half like magic, half like storytelling type of like one-man show that started off in New York, and then they made a special out of it and put it on Hulu, and everyone was into it. I think Santino had him on Whiskey Ginger possibly at one point, but Tom also had him on Tom Talks back when he was doing that. And I remember he said that he was like raised by 2 lesbians, and it hurt him so much when like people either called him or his mother's like the F word like slur. And like we let that in, like we left that in unbleeped, anything, like unedited. And within like a couple days, the episode was just fully taken down. And I remember like, all right, well, let's like call a YouTube rep and start cracking some skulls. And I remember like calling her at the time. I was like, what's happening here? Like, why did this episode get taken down? We got nothing. And she's like, oh, I see. You guys said the F word like at this time code.
Right.
I was like, but you guys understand context, right? Like he was
The
talking
algorithm
about,
does not understand context.
he was talking about how much that word hurts him, which is exactly what your policy is. Like, it's not just, well, you can't say it at all. It's like, no. It's literally reinforcing why that word is so bad.
Right.
It's
Totally.
mind-boggling how like the head is detached from the hands and like just all of it. Like the brain does not communicate to all the different appendages. Of that
Absolutely.
company.
So I hate censoring a word now because people see it. So now I work really hard to cut that word out.
To just remove it.
To remove the word out and keep the flow of the conversation. So it's, I would say 80% of the times I'm successful because they say the word and then it's like, so it is like, oh, I went to this fucking party. Then you'll hear, I went to the party or to this party in the final mix.
Right.
So at least on those first 5 minutes, I can have it no swear words, but also no bleep, so people don't feel that it was censored.
There's definitely been times though that we've leaned into it where it was a word that we don't need to bleep, and it's like 30 minits into the episode,
That's
so it doesn't
funny.
matter. But it's like, you know what? It'd be a lot funnier if we did bleep this, and you just hear like 5 bleeps in a row.
You make a joke out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and play with that. George likes to play with that too, and he George was the person who brought me into this world of like podcasting, and he had way more. He has more like your trajectory of like starting on an audio podcast and going
Right.
to video and starting from scratch. While I kind of was, he always says like, oh, whenever anyone asks you, you just have to say thank you, George, right? So I'll just
Yours
say it
and
here.
George's relationship is so fun to watch.
Yeah. But he's like, he basically, I started working on a podcast that already was successful from episode 1.
Mhm.
So I didn't have to do the grinding.
Right. He's like, you didn't have to earn it.
Right.
You're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly.
And George is tall.
Yeah, he's very tall. So that was like my path to getting into the chair was pretty much a lot of hard work, but completely, then luck and timing of like, oh, I thought when I started working on Bad Friends that it was gonna be something that I did for 3 or 4 months.
Uh-huh. Until like movies started picking up again.
Exactly. But because I had so much fun, I laugh a lot, and it was like, relaxing for me to be laughing so much.
Right.
And that then it became a thing, and then I didn't know that I was contributing to make a show that was gonna be so big.
Yeah, I mean it's like I feel like you could probably relate to this too, but there's so many different variations of projects that you could work on. And really the things like the ultimate unicorn is working on something that you would watch with people that you like.
Right.
Like making it with people that you like, and because there's so many dog shit projects that I worked on. I'm like, I would never watch this Lifetime movie.
Right.
But the people that worked there were kind of good hangs.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
Or we were making like AT&T Uverse branded content. I'm like, this sucks. But the friends that I made on my smoke breaks are like fucking
They're cool.
OGs.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Exactly. No, I agree. This became that thing where like, oh, it's fun to go to work. It's not that I have to every time I should. No, it's like, oh, actually I have fun doing this.
Right.
And then it's funny. It's objectively, I think it's a funny show. Actually, they spoil a lot of comedy for me now because I'm so used to the rhythm. When I watch something that is not as funny, I just
totally.
like.
Yeah, and especially now that you're editing this stuff, like it's the same as like, if you're watching a film, like I'm watching TV shows, we can't help but see the seams of how everything is made, and
Right.
it's like, that's a bad cut, that's a bad switch, like I wouldn't have done it that way, that's a weird time to put an ad break, like you
Right.
you're seeing all the things that you wish you couldn't, so you could just enjoy the podcast that you want to enjoy.
Absolutely, yeah. So I try not to watch too much outside of this because now I don't find it as funny.
So do you still edit the episodes?
I still edit a lot of it, yeah.
Wild, dude.
George says that I am a micromanager. I don't think that's the truth. The truth is that I like the rhythm, and because it works so well.
Right.
That
You could teach someone else to play that instrument.
Right. Yes. And I had and they've done it. The company.
And then you were like, "Fuck that."
No. It has worked really well. It has worked really well. So now, more and more, I'm letting go of that part because I see that it's working without me.
Yeah.
Which also was something that I wanted to do from the beginning. Make sure that I wasn't a piece that I cannot be sick one day or like I have vacation and then the show has to stop.
Yeah.
Because for a year and a half, it was like that. If you are not there, we cannot shoot. If you're not there, we cannot edit. We cannot upload because it's a one-man show.
Right.
So slowly that has...
And that's the hardest part about, becoming like going from like a one-person team or a two-person team
Right.
into like, hold on, do I want to teach this person my secrets? Like, this is step one of being pushed out.
Indeed.
But then you start developing a confidence, and it's like, no, I'm here because of my instincts.
Right.
And because of the decisions that I'm able to make. And sure, I could teach someone how to make these decisions, but that doesn't devalue, like, having two people on a crew that are able to make good decisions are better than having one person.
Agree. And also, I never wanted to be so indispensable that if I'm not here, the show cannot be done. That makes no sense.
That's bad producing.
Exactly. And for a show this big, where like, it makes sense that if one of them is not available, that the show cannot go on. But
Right. That's the only time that you shouldn't be able to shoot is like,
right.
Oh, the two people have COVID and we can't do it. And even then you're like, all right, someone will go into their house with a mask,
Right.
set shit up, and like,
Indeed.
Yeah.
And we have a great team. I think like, and Pete was with me for a while doing Bad Friends, and now Carlos is doing it with me. And sometimes if I cannot be there, they can do it on their own. And I felt like the quality is always consistent,
Right.
which is good. I think now as a company, we have a good hand on Bad Friends. And if I'm not there, I'm not that missed,
Right.
Which is a little sad, but it's better for the show.
No, definitely. And you guys, like, I remember there'd be so many, like, especially with, people going on tour and, like, schedules being crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys, like, bank stuff or not, but, like, when we banked things, like, it sucks because you have to, like, shit, Tom's going out of town for, like, 4 weeks straight, like, into Europe. And so you have to do 4 weeks, and you have to, how do we do it in a way where it's not obvious that these are banked? And sure, that's an impossible task by the 4th episode, and you're doing 2 episodes a day over a span of 2 days.
Yeah. I've tried everything with them. We cannot shoot more than an episode a day. It's impossible.
It's honestly a good way to do it too. The creative juices like replenish.
They if they get into a bad mood because of that, we might shoot it and then it needs to be shelved for.
Right.
So I think we can do 2 episodes in a week if we space them up enough. It could be a Tuesday and a Saturday or a Sunday.
And that's a perfect way to do it because people forget where it's. Yes, you do have the time to do 3 episodes in one day.
Yeah.
But, like, these are humans you're working with, and you're asking someone to be on a microphone for, like, 3 hours at a time. Or, with Bad Friends, if you're doing an hour and a half to 2 hours and then cutting it down, that's 6 hours of being on.
It's way too much. Also, I think, like, you don't give them enough credit. I mean, you do because you see how people tune in to watch them, so they know that they have something special. But it's not just talking. It's a muscle, right? That they've developed over these years. If everybody could do it, I would do it. If I was able to be that funny or to have that sort of skill. But they prepare all week. They don't prepare like in writing it down, but they are this funny story and this thing that happened to me at the grocery. This is all gonna be the show today.
Right. Right, and you need time to breathe in order to come up with it. Like
exactly.
Like, I mean, like, for my show, like, there's, I could bank a whole bunch of stuff, but if I do, it has to be evergreen. It can't be on what's happening in podcasting right now, because even if I record something in 4 weeks, there's a good chance that either that's now completely changed, or there's been another thing or two that now has evolved that situation. It's like, cool, I need to either film more things for it or just scrap it because it doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, and there are things that are evergreen, like an interview you can do at different times with the person. Right. But the thing that they do, that improv thing, because it's a wild to think that we don't have a script ever.
Right.
We don't have even...
You guys don't even have beats, like notes for them to look off?
Nothing. Not one written thing.
Okay. So that was
the only show that I've ever worked on that has that instinctual thing. What we have for them are beats prepared in case, like a
safety net type deal.
Like, and sometimes we like to throw, like, we used to read the scripts or to watch certain videos, but that is not what happens on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Like,
they sit down, they start talking, that's it. They never look at a paper.
So in terms of, like, do you pitch them things from time to time? We're like, hey, it would be really funny. Or, like, the comment section really went crazy for this thing. Yes. Like, letting them know, like, hey, this part really resonated with the fans.
Yeah, we do that thing, and or we have these discussions of, like, oh, it would be great to do this. We wanted to do a special 200 episode and go to Vegas and bring Bobby's mom as a surprise. Cool.
Right.
But the day-to-day is usually they come in and start talking. And it's wild seeing how for nothing they make up.
Yeah. It's so fun. Like, and that's the thing too. And, like, I've always had this, like, on any artist that does an art that I don't know how to do.
Right.
Like, I know post-production very well. I don't know VFX. I don't know music. I'm not a stand-up comedian. So when you see someone riffing on something in a talent or a skill that you don't know, you're like,
right.
This is wizardry. Like, this is magic that they're doing.
Absolutely.
And it's just fun to watch. And
also, there is not that many people, there's a lot of people who can do what we do. Maybe not that many, but no.
There's a lot of people that think they could do what we do.
But definitely there's more people that can be trained and do what we do than trained in being a new Bobby or Andrew or Tom or Bert, because they have something special in their personalities that
Right.
made them who they are.
And it also takes 20 to 30 years to actually get to a point where they have that kind of voice.
Right.
And so many people are like, I could talk about how messy of a shit I took
Yeah.
this morning. And it's like, yeah, but not the way that they do.
Right. They put me, during the live shows and things like that. Once Bobby made me go to the mic and say, like, you're going to be there for 2 minutes. I was there for like maybe 30 seconds and I was sweating. You know how difficult it is and how like nerve-wracking.
Right.
3,000 people look at you and then they go there. It's
So
fun.
that's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about. And I know we're kind of like probably running out of time and to get on to the next thing. But the other interesting and fascinating thing about Bad Friends is that you guys take it on the road.
Yeah.
And so what was that like? Because, you've made movies and now you've done podcasts, but now it's like, Jesus, a fucking traveling podcast, like dealing with, crews of theaters and like dealing with all like the travel of everything. Like, how does the traveling Bad Friends show differ from the normal show? Is it more work? Is it less work? Is it stressful? Like,
Yeah.
compare and contrast for me.
So the original idea was to create a script that they would have so the show could be repeated and they wouldn't have to do a new thing every time.
Mm-hmm.
So they really want to go on the road. They are stand-up comedians, so
Right.
they do get the energy from people. So the show was divided into, or is divided in 2 parts. Like one, they do stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
They do like maybe 25 minutes each, and they bring a couple people in front of them.
Okay.
And then the second part is the live show.
Mm-hmm.
And we, so I had an idea that was, can we bring the set on the road? And then
What a headache, dude.
What a headache.
I'm already thinking like fucking no.
But they did those step and repeat with big pictures of the set, and it looks so good.
Really?
It is so simple, and it's 2 banners basically going like this that it looks like the set.
No shit.
And they put a couch in front, and that
Oh
was
yeah,
it.
because from the back of the theater, it all looks the same.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
just like an imagining that, oh, you are on the Bad Friends set. That's it. And people take pictures with them, and it looks like that. And then we did a script of bits of like what are the things that they could do, and we came up with like maybe 12, 18 things that they wanted to do, and then they pick and choose. And every show they either do this or that. But I was having a baby at the moment where the tour started, so I actually did not go with them on the. I'm not in charge of the tour.
Okay.
They hire a tour manager,
Smart.
and like the same way that you do with bands and all of that.
Right.
Someone who, and then Carlos is the one who goes with them and takes care of all the producing.
Okay.
But the main thing was like we had a script, and it's like, okay, so let's say that we're gonna do this fan interaction with the or
Right.
we have a QR code at the beginning of the show, and people can send things
I
to
see.
participate. So they do a lot of like crowd work or bits with the audience.
Right.
So it's very, very different than the show.
And you guys started like when was the idea incepted of like, hey, we should take this show on the road?
I think Bobby and Andrew wanted to go on the road together, and instead of doing just stand up, it could be so they call it the Bad
Oh.
Friends like stand up.
So they wanted to make it a little extra special than just stand up.
Right.
That's great.
And so it was just very simple like that. Hey, people love them together. Really, stand up is not a 2-man show.
Mm-hmm.
So this became like it's kind of like stand up with 2 people. They
Right.
play music. They riff with people, with each other, but it's not really like sitting down and doing the podcast.
Right. And it fulfills so many more buckets too, where it's like
Yeah.
if you're just fans of their stand up, there's that. But also if you're just fans of the podcast, there's a little bit of that for you too.
Absolutely. And there's the people can take pictures with them and all of that. They have the closeness
Right.
of being there, and they're so much fun with people.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great. And so you guys, is that something that you guys just did within the last like year and a half?
It's so next month it'll be the year anniversary of the
Oh,
of
wow.
the tour, and we're stopping.
Okay. Smart. How many shows did you guys do?
I think we end up doing 62 cities.
That is absolutely insane.
Crazy.
So was
They are
it that
machines.
every weekend they're doing it, or is it like they're doing like 3 or 4 cities within a weekend?
So they did both ways. Like the hardcore of the schedule was like 3 weeks in a row of like city, like a band,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes doubles, or like they would sleep on the bus. They did the tour bus and all that. The second part of the tour was more like we fly this long weekend and we do 2, 3 cities. And now it's more like just the weekends.
Okay.
'Cause
Smart.
it's getting smaller and smaller. But 60, yeah, it's insane. And they're gonna do an international tour for a month at the end of the year
Fun.
in Australia.
At the end. Oh, so it's like kind of going to double as a vacation a little bit for everyone?
I probably.
You're like, hopefully.
Hopefully.
You bringing the wife and kid for that?
Oh no, I don't think I'm going, but yes, I think that's gonna be more just the two of them. But we'll see.
Hell yeah. And
So yeah, that's kind of like how the tour started, and yeah, we're always trying to look at what else. As a producer, I'm always thinking, what else could we do?
right.
Since I have this playground with these great toys,
Right.
I can throw at them multiple different things, and they will always respond well. So we're thinking of doing a live stream,
Hell yeah.
special theme with them. We did once already, year 2, and now thinking about maybe we can do sketches, maybe we can do like what else
That'd
can
be
they
super
do?
fun.
And they're always open to do more things, so which is cool.
Hell yeah. Dude, this has been so insightful.
Yeah.
It's so cool to like learn about other people's journeys. Like we've known of each other for a while, but
Right.
like this weekend is kind of like the first time we've actually like hung out and
Absolutely.
exchanged meals and dinners and
Totally. It's so much fun. I always wanted to, from the beginning, one thing that I love about the film business is the collaborations, right? Like,
right.
I never want to be a painter or a writer and do it by myself. I always wanted to be in a group of people.
Right.
And from the beginning, it's like, how can we, that's why we came up with that fourth, April's Fool, like, swap.
Right. With
Like,
Two Bears and Bad Friends.
Yeah, how I always looking for those things. How can I interact with other producers and do things, or can we do prank each other?
Right.
Can we create those synergies to create a bigger world for us?
There really is like the industry is already small.
Right.
But the comedy podcast industry, like the producers, there's really just a handful of us that are doing it.
Exactly. So it's always fun to meet them and like learn from what their
Right.
journey and how they look at things.
Right, because there's like you've learned from your mistakes over the last years.
Yeah.
You haven't learned from my mistakes and vice versa,
Absolutely.
So it's like when we come together, we both are just have the capability to make each other better at what, there's so
Absolutely.
many things that we're able to take from each other.
Yeah. Of course.
And, the biggest thing, we'll end with this, the biggest reason why I'm doing this is so that people kind of get an insight on what it takes to kind of, oh, you want to produce podcasts? Well, here's Andres' story,
Right.
Here's George Kimmel's story. Here's Ben Avery's story. Here's my story. Here's anyone's story that you know. But a lot of people are always looking for advice on how to get there. So let's say there's someone at home that's watching this and they're like, oh, I want to do this, but it's so daunting. Like I can't go to film school right now. What would you say is like the biggest piece of advice that you could give to someone that's sitting at home on the couch? Let's say they work in the service industry or something and they want to break out of it. What's the biggest advice that you could give someone like that?
I think craft is the most important element for a producer. I think a lot of people want to be in the podcast industry, but they want to be the star. And when you think of film, most people who go to film school, they don't want to direct the movies for them to act. There's a handful of people who have done that successfully, but usually it's like either you are behind or in front. With podcast, the line gets so blurred.
Right.
So even that podcast movement, everybody has a podcast, and they are the star of their own podcast. And being charismatic enough to carry something like that is usually very difficult.
Right.
So I would think first, like, what do you want to do in this industry? Do you want to be the host? Are you that person, or do you want to produce or work with other people that are gonna be the talent?
Right.
And then if you are in that second bucket, which is where we all are, I would say like work on your craft, because yeah, film school is expensive, but learning equipment, learning enough of those skills is pretty much something that you can learn on your own with YouTube,
Right.
It's not that difficult. I would say this has 3 or 4 different buckets. One is the technical skills. You need, if you're going to be hired to do that, you need to know how to move the cameras, put them there, record the audio, the edit. Because if not, why would they need you?
Right.
You're coming in as that person.
Right. You need to know the thing that they don't know how to do. They know how to show up and be funny, or whatever type of podcast
I
it
would
is.
say that the technical skill you need. Then the talent management skill, I would say, like, can you be cool enough?
Ooh, what advice would you give for someone to get better at that?
I would say, like, one, if you're a fanboy, you have to pretend not to be.
Right.
You can't come, nobody wants. If you're a super fan and you're the biggest fan of this person, they're going to say not to that person because they're going to be scared of you.
Right. They're like, ugh, what the fuck is this?
Exactly.
Like, this isn't what I came here
They
for.
want someone professional, so you have to act cool, I would say. Act
Right.
cool. And then, what's that line between, like, you want to be their friends, you want to be their... What I want, usually, is, like, I want their respect so I can talk business and improve the show.
Right.
And I don't care much about, like, hanging out with them outside or getting the...
Right.
Other people do care about that.
Right.
And it
Oh, yeah.
makes...
Interested in the limelight of it all. It's just like,
Right.
I just want to help build this ship.
Right.
I don't want to fucking always get dinner. Like, I don't give a shit.
Right. And so that thing is important to me because if they respect you as a professional, then you can have an input in what you're saying.
Right.
If you are just there to get them cigarettes and whatever it is, like, eventually you have no say on the show.
Right. And like, not to say that, like, there is a time and a place for that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I can't tell you how many people at YMH started off as that, where it's just
Right.
like, oh yeah, you're the person that's going to get lunch every day.
Yeah.
And then they've just turned into, like, one of the top producers.
Absolutely. And there's no... Also, this is this industry starts like that. It's a
Right.
pretty hierarchical,
Right.
right? In terms of, like, PAs start at the bottom and all of that. But I'm saying in terms of, like, yeah, just be the... What do you want to be is my biggest question is, do you want to be a professional in the industry? Do you want to build a show? Do you want to be respected in that? Or do you want to hang out with people that are very cool and get a
Right.
little bit of that fame or limelight, like you said, like, be on that light?
Right.
And I think I would say, like, most people are more in this second bucket, and those are the people who don't last that much.
Right. Yeah. It's so funny because you and me both know people in this industry. They're like, fuck, dude, these people really just want they want to hang out with the celebrities and do that
Right.
shit and act like they're, like, talent, man. It's just like,
Exactly.
homie, just stick to what you know. We don't need you spilling into this part that's making our jobs harder. you
Right,
know?
right. So I think that's what I would say. Like, learn the craft, act cool, and be a professional. I always tell my students that luck is the Venn diagram between, like, preparation and opportunity.
Totally, dude. I've been saying that. Yeah, it's absolutely that. Because, yes, we're both lucky, but that came with years and, if not decades, of preparing for that opportunity.
Right, preparing and be ready for when the opportunities happens, not to fuck it up. Right, like,
Right.
because I believe the opportunity will come to everyone at one point, and it's like either you're ready for it or you're not.
Totally.
Yeah. So that'll be my biggest advice, to, like, work on your thing and the things that you have control over, and then be aware of the opportunities. Say yes to things. Try different things.
Yes is your biggest friend.
Yeah.
Don't be the person that's like, hey, you guys should make a movie about XYZ. Just, if they're like, hey, do you want to help with this movie? Like, I would love to.
Right. Indeed.
Well, Andres, thank you so much for doing this episode of Catching You Up with Nadav.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's I can't say how nice and kind and hospitable you guys have been towards me. And once again, just give people plugs. Where can they find you? What things are you working on?
Yeah, check us out at all the shows that 7X do. I'm on SOS VHS and Bad Friends, but we as a company make a lot of content that is, I think, pretty cool.
Hell yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Man, what a fun episode. I hope you guys are enjoying this series, and if you guys want to hear the path or the history of other people in this podcasting world, go ahead and put their name in the comments so I can see who you guys would like me to talk to. Now would be a good time to remind you to comment, like, and subscribe. And while you're doing that, I would like to thank everyone that you're seeing on screen right now. Without their help and their support, it'd be very hard for me to continue putting these episodes out on a regular basis. But because of their support, I'm able to do so. And if you would like to support this show as well, you can go ahead and click the Patreon link in the description below. And with that, I'd like to thank you for catching another episode of Catching You Up with
Nadav, it's COVID.
But most importantly, I would like to remind you.
This is a totally unconfirmed news.
See you next week.